Welcome to Invest in Yourself, the Digital Entrepreneur Podcast. Join the Podcast Mogul Phil Better as he interviews successful entrepreneurs that make their living in the digital world. Now, let's join your host, Phil Better, and his special guest today on Invest in Yourself, the Digital Entrepreneur Podcast.
Hey there, digital entrepreneurs and aspiring speakers. Welcome back to another electrifying episode of Invest in Yourself, the Digital Entrepreneur Podcast, your ultimate source for unlocking the secrets to success in the digital age. I am your host, Phil Better, the Podcast Mogul, and today we have a guest who's about to ignite your passion for public speaking like never before. Imagine a voice and public speaking coach with a flair so captivating, it's practically contagious. For over 2 decades, she's been on a mission to empower professionals to speak with unwavering confidence, drawing from her own illustrious career as a TV reporter. But wait, there's more. Not only has she left an indelible mark on the world of public speaking, but she's also amassed a thriving community of over 300,000 people on TikTok, with possibly a smaller percentage left thanks to the US, but where her infectious energy and invaluable tips continue to inspire and uplift thousands. And here's the kicker. As her credentials aren't enough or impressive, she's also a TEDx speaker coach, wielding a hairbrush as a microphone with unparalleled expertise. In fact, in 2020, she was rightfully crowned the Young Entrepreneur of the Year for PR and Media in Queensland, solidifying her status as a trailblazer in her field. So without further ado, I am absolutely pleased to present to you the powerhouse in the realm of public speaking and empowerment, Sally Prosser. Sally, thank you so much for being here.
Phil, what a fantastic introduction. Thank you for that. It's great to be here.
You are incredibly welcome, Sally. I had your bio and I was just like, I need to make this special because you hit some high notes. I'm sorry. Doing a TEDx with a microphone, a hairbrush, that's impressive. That's impressive.
Yes.
And like
in the coaching of TEDx, yes.
Yeah, it's like that's crazy. So before we're going to jump straight into it. So why did you become an entrepreneur? What was it that forced you or made you decide to jump into this world that we enjoy so much?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I started this business around 5 years ago, and I'll share the story about why I started it 5 years ago. However, I actually started my first business when I was 16. So I started a speech and drama studio in the front room of my parents' house, which was it's kind of like the garage type section. And I was teaching kids as young as 4 and as old as 17 before and after school. And it was so funny because I never considered myself to be an entrepreneur at that stage. It was just kind of like, oh, this is something that I enjoy doing. And the hourly rate was a bit higher than working behind a bar or some other options at that time. And so really from that time being a speech and drama teacher, then I going into TV and radio news reporting, and then being a spokesperson for a company, I suppose voice and speaking has been a strong thread that's run through all of those things. And then I was at my job previous to starting my business, which was in public relations. And I was just in a regular meeting, not virtual at that stage, right? An in-person meeting. And I walked out, and a woman who I didn't know that well, I knew who she was, but I didn't know her that well. She chased me down and she said, Sal, can I ask you something? How do you always say what you want to say in meetings? And I thought it was just such a bizarre question because I had been working on not speaking so much in meetings, listening. And I said, what do you mean? What do you mean? How do I always say what I want to say? She said, oh, well, I, write down what I want to say before I go in, and I get tongue-tied and I go to speak and I get interrupted, or I can't get my words out. And I just always leave never feeling like I have said what I wanted to say. I said, well, we can't have this. So we started having little lessons in the kitchen at lunchtime, which is giving her some tips. And then that led to me being asked to MC a big event for the company. And the CEO of the company actually said, Sal, you should go and do that full time. And so that planted that seed, which I'm sure every entrepreneur has that moment where they're like, oh, hang on, I can do this. And that led to me putting in my notice and saying, you know what? When I was at uni, I was very, very happy on 2-minute noodles and cask wine. And so if I'm really down to it, I know I'll be quite happy. So I went for it. I had no pets, no boyfriend. I was Airbnb-ing out this very room, actually, before my business grew. I was Airbnb-ing out the room. So I had a few other little like backup plans and I went for it. And the rest is history, as they say.
I love that. That's awesome. Oh my God. And it's all in or, not in at all in this regard for you. Like some entrepreneurs do. Some start with a side hustle, just build it up until it goes. You were like, nah, let's go. I got one good person. I'm going to go for it full time.
Yeah, well, the full story is while I was at my other job, I did have some voice students on the side, a few. And I also used all the skills from being a spokesperson, from being a reporter, from being a speech and drama in my business. So I was already qualified and experienced in it. Like I think that some people who just go cold turkey and say, I'm going to go and open up this beautiful B&B by the beach, but I've never worked in hospitality and I don't know anything about it, but I'm just going to go for it. I imagine that would be a lot more challenging. So when people say, oh, you're so brave. Yeah, I think every entrepreneur knows there's a bit of courage that you need to go for it. We're all a little bit, crazy. But at the same time, I felt like everything in my life had been leading up to this point. So I felt very well prepared to go into this business.
I love that. I love that you were prepared and you knew exactly what you wanted to do. Plus, you had all the major contacts to connect with people who either need some help with their coaching and their voice work as well, being in the PR world.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is the thing with public speaking. Some people think it's, well, if I'm not on stage at a lectern, then I'm not a public speaker. But I really work with people from all industries, across business, professional. Some people come to me to help with their wedding speech. Everybody, no matter who you are or what you do, needs to use their voice in some way.
With your start being, at 16, being pretty much in the same industry that you've been in, just, one with kids to now adults, have you seen a change in the methods that have been going on to bring in that confidence to make individuals be able to fall into their voice, like find their voice, if you will?
Yeah, 100%. And having worked, well, because kids are a bit easier, when
they have no preconceptions.
They got more confidence. And way back when, the attention span was longer, they'd be dropped off at their half an hour or an hour speech and drama lesson and you'd go through all the different things. So working now with adults, I am constantly looking at my methods and changing my processes, and also person to person, because it's about getting in tune with how that person works. So even just on a high level, some people learn better visually. So they like it when I write everything down and show lots of graphs and all the rest of it. Other people like myself. And Phil, I'm guessing you as well, being a podcaster, often we're quite auditory.
Yeah.
Like we like listening to stuff and talking. And so sometimes it's just having that conversation and being able to draw that out. And then with other people, it's, what can I hold? I don't have them right here, but I've got bright red stress, like they look like lips, but it's a stress ball. So often I'll have those to give people. Hang on, it's very close. I'll grab it.
For sure. Oh my God, that's amazing. I love those. Those are amazing. For the audience who are just listening, they're bright red. Just picture the kiss lips, pretty much bright red, deliciously red lips that are pluckable, are kissable as well.
Yeah, and that's the exciting thing about being an entrepreneur as well. And the way that I work is I am always looking at how can we help people learn better? How can we have our processes more accessible to more people? And then also keeping up with the trends. So the pandemic is just a perfect reason. I was very fortunate. I had my very first online course, get this, very first online course that started on March 16, 2020.
Oh my God.
Right? Like it was just a really, I mean, I know there are no coincidences. The timing was crazy because that was right, when everything started to happen. Yeah. And there were people that were like, wow, Sal, you moved fast. I was like, well, I can't really claim that because that's a little bit bit too fast. But so many more of my clients now are wanting to know how they can present on camera and how they can connect on the phone. So it's changing.
And it's great that you know how to present on camera. Like, you're bringing that authority because you were a news reporter. You had that ability, and so you already know how to engage in the like. I've been watching you, and I'm like, yeah, she's a professional. Like, I've had a few former newscasters on, and you can immediately tell just your presence already. You already know how to look at the camera, talk to the camera, engage the camera, and it's far superior than some of the others I've had on the guest. So your clients are just getting next level coaching with that.
Oh, thank you. Well, I will tell you a little secret. Well, part of it is, if you've been in the media, you become a little bit of a, camera tart. Like, where's the camera? Where's the microphone? To me? But also, I invested in some really great gear a couple of years ago. So quite an expensive setup where I've got I don't know if you can tell, it's like a cinematic quality camera.
Yeah, it's a 4K camera, feels like it.
4K, it's a 4K camera. I've got light here. I've got backlight set up there. I've got a front light here. And when people come in, it does look like I'm at space control type thing. And I wouldn't say that everybody needs to invest at this level. I mean, I do this professionally, and especially when I'm working across different time zones. I found myself having to do like a call where it was dark in Brisbane. It was about 7:00 at night. The sun sets quite early here. And I was trying to work out with lamps and my ring light and all of these contraptions to try to make it look good. And I thought, when you're doing it professionally, it's not going to work. So now, no matter what time of day, I can put it on and it's good quality. So I would highly recommend for any entrepreneurs listening where they do want to make it, whether it's online courses or YouTube, or be able to have that good quality for podcast interviews like this, I'd say it's one of the best investments I made.
I love it. When it does come to the public speaking, because I know I always get butterflies when I do start an interview, because I'm like, oh my God, will this be a good show? Like, that's my big thing is like, will my audience get the most out of the episodes? That's my major fear, and that's where my butterflies come from. I can stumble 100 times, whatever, it happens, it's life. And it's just like, do I ask the questions that make the guests interested? So I'm not scared to make a fool of myself. Public speaking, I love it. But I know a lot of people have that fear of public speaking because they're scared of being made fun of, or if they trip up or something like that. When you're working with your clients, how often is that a fear? And what are some ways maybe someone can get over that quickly? They have to do that presentation they're fearful of.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Breaking through that fear is truly life-changing, and it really is the core of what I do. Phil, you're absolutely nailing it. And what I say to people is that you don't need to get rid of your butterflies. You just need them flying in formation. So it's about channeling that energy and imagining your voice is kind of like a pipe. I used to work at a water and sewage company, so it's kind of a bit gross when you think of it like that. But clear that channel so the voice can flow, because people aren't afraid of speaking. The fear is of the judgment, or the fear is of being exposed, being vulnerable, because sometime in our life, it's a very common story, we have been vulnerable, we have spoken up, and we've been shamed for it, or shut down for it, or criticized for it. And so then we go, okay, well, I don't know if it's really safe or okay for me to speak up. So I would say the big tip I'll share today is breathing. Is to really breathe, because oxygen powers our voice. Without breath, there is no voice. And what can happen, especially when there's nerves and tension, all of the breath gets pushed up high in the chest. And then that can cause the voice to go in the head, and the pitch can go high and the pace can go fast, and you can have this kind of out-of-body experience and be like, oh my gosh. If we can breathe down, I say, imagine your buttocks are your lungs. You're not going to forget that. Imagine but you breathe into them, don't breathe out of them. That's something different. breathe in that low area, and that will help you get back into your body. And when your voice is back into your body, then you'll really be able to feel the words. You'll feel more grounded, more calm, and you'll get away from that overthinking, that overstressing, or what people often say to me is they get brain freeze. And brain freeze is like the equivalent of if anyone's got a Mac, it's like the spinning wheel of death. right? So it's like it's loading. And that's what happens when we get brain freeze, because there's too much in the head and not enough down in the body. So breathing in is also known as inspiration, right? So if you want to inspire others, you must first inspire yourself. So take that breath in, that breath out, and then that breath in before you speak. And just doing that is going to totally change not just the quality of your voice, but also how you feel about speaking.
Ooh, I love it. That's a great piece of advice. I think I do it naturally because I used to do theater when I was younger. So I think I got used to like being everywhere. My father has taught me to project my voice as well. So like I never was fearful of my voice, and I love sharing it. So maybe that's why I'm a podcaster. Uh, always talking.
Well, Phil, you've definitely got that voice. You can hear the theater background, and I love that you said that. Is that all public speaking is using your voice.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're not afraid to use your voice, then you can apply that to speaking.
Yeah, I love it.
They're one and the same.
It truly is. When you're happy to hear, I dislike listening to my voice. I love talking. There's the big difference. But that's because of my past work, having to criticize my calls. But anyways, as a leader in the public speaking coaching area, and with the recent rise of it thanks to COVID, because that changed the game, how do you see the future of this public speaking industry going forward? Do you see it still staying a hybrid method, or do we revert back to the old school method of in-place conferences and speaking events?
Really interesting. So the weekend just gone, I was at the Professional Speakers Australia National Convention, which is the Australian Speakers Association. And this was one of the topics around the future of speaking. And this particular topic wasn't raised, but they did say that AI is being used a lot more. And that it's so important. I would definitely be on board with this as well. The importance of the human voice and human emotion. We're all like, AI is going to improve more and more. At the moment, you can kind of tell whether something's written by somebody or by ChatGPT. Right? You can kind of tell because it's still got that difference. It will start to get so good that you won't be able to tell. People will be able to plug it with so much of their own language that you won't be able to tell. So speaking is sort of a similar thing. And somebody mentioned at this convention that somebody had made a deep fake of them, right? You're famous if someone's made a deep fake.
Yeah, like, okay, deep fake, let's go. I'm in the top.
Yeah, well, one of the other presenters are like, no, that hasn't happened to me yet. Yeah. But what it does speak to is the importance, this is the work that I love and gets me up in the morning every day, is that human emotion, that connection with the human voice. And whether we're speaking on social media or on podcasts or on stage, I don't think the location really matters. I think that we'll continue to have both online and on stage running side by side. I think the key will be real storytelling, real voices, and even a few more are like, filler words, things that tell the audience that, hey, this is a real person and they are speaking from their true emotion.
I love that. I like that. Just as I myself, it's interesting. I try and stop myself from umming and saying like words, because sometimes I feel like you're using it as a filler instead of fully having your thought process out. With like you said, the AI, and you can tell because there's no ums and ahs and it sounds perfect. There are podcast tools that remove that. Do you think that that's doing a disservice to the speakers on that podcast, or are they becoming too professional, if you will?
Ooh, it's interesting because I have a podcast as well. It's called That Voice Podcast, and I edit every podcast. I don't outsource the editing. And the reason for that is exactly what you're saying, Phil, is that sometimes it's important to remove the ums and the ahs and the rest of it, because it's just getting in the way of the audience hearing the message, right? Because that's what it's about. It's about the audience hearing the message. There are times when the pause is so long that you will need to make it a bit shorter, but there are other times when it needs to breathe. because for the audience to hear the meaning, they need that longer time, or they need those filler words, So that's where I think it's about that heart-to-heart connection. I always say when people listen to you, you don't want them to listen with their ears, but like the ears of their heart. You want them to feel what you're saying. So every podcast has a different style. Every podcaster has a different process. And I don't know, what do you think? You do a lot more podcasting than me.
I'm when I look at it as an independent podcaster for a small business owner, I believe keeping the authenticity of the ums and ahs allows you to have that more personal connection. When we're looking at a larger corporation, if you will, like a Nike, Amazon, or a media corporation, like the ABCs, NBCs of the world, and they're producing it, I feel the ums and ahs, unless it's an interview-based podcast, I think they should be removed, because we're expecting a certain level of professionalism or quality from them, versus if we know it's an independent podcaster like myself or yourself, or we don't have the big backings of a corporation behind us, so we're expecting somewhat of an authenticity to it. Obviously, if like you said, the pause is too long, or the ums is like 20 in a row, it takes away from the thing. People will be okay with the removal of that, but keeping somewhat of an authentic feel when it is the independent. Once I become like a big major person and I have billions of dollars, then professionalism comes in and cleaning up all the ums. But I do believe that it is essential to keep that authenticity.
Yeah, and if when you're speaking, you're worried about ums and ahs, a good little tip is to, have awareness and replace it with the pause, but just keep the jaw nice and relaxed and open. It's much better if you've asked me a question and I go, yeah, good question, than if I go, so see how it's like a closed kind of thing? And what that can do is it can make it harder to think about what to say, rather than which sort of gets the voice flowing.
Already starts the flowing of it, starts the flow of ideas, if you will, instead of having the shut jaw, which can create a wall.
Exactly. Yeah. So if you are going to have fillers, have the open ones, not the closed ones.
There we go. Another great piece of advice. With your expertise, like you've already provided some great pieces of advice. I want to get maybe some transformation, because I'm pretty sure you've seen some remarkable ones with your clients' abilities. Do you care to share a success story or a testimony of a client that you may have? Obviously, no names are necessary, but just the overall how they went through.
Yeah, absolutely. So I had one business owner who was a photographer. And she said, look, Sal, I don't want to do any videos online because I don't know, I look kind of weird. And I'm not the big extrovert. Like, if you're not seeing me, I'm in literally a hot pink leopard print dress. So,
You look fabulous, by the way. You pull it off.
Oh, thank you, Phil. I'm filming a video today about expression. So I thought, well, that kind of matches.
It's a very expressive shirts or
the theme.
Colors,
Yeah.
So.
So she was saying, her style was a bit more subdued and she didn't want to do the whole rah-rah. I think a lot of entrepreneurs, I work with lots of business owners, they feel like they need to speak in a certain way or be like someone in order to go viral or to get views or whatever it is. When really you just have to be yourself. The more of yourself you can bring, the more magnetic you'll be, because people are really attracted to people who are fully in their power and fully themselves, and they're also repelled as well. But that's the beauty of being yourself, is that you can attract people and also repel people that aren't meant for you. So we worked through these blocks around, I'm an introvert, therefore I can't show up on camera, or I look weird, therefore I sound weird, therefore, all of these stories that we tell ourselves that stop us from doing what we want to do. So we worked through that, and she started making a few little TikToks and a few little Instagrams, giving tips about how to use your iPhone and lighting and different things. She's a photographer. And then a couple of months later, I got this DM in my Instagram saying, you're not going to believe this. I've gone mega viral. I wouldn't have been able to do it without you. Thank you so much. Now, when I read that, I was like, oh no, her account's been hacked, because it looked like a little bit of a spamming message. And I was like, and I actually wrote back, I've got it in the thing. I'm like, is this you? And she was like, yes, it is. And I went into her account, 190,000 Instagram followers.
Wow.
I know. And yes, it's been from the content she was sharing and a whole lot of other marketing things that had come into it. But it would never have begun if it wasn't for working through those blocks around hearing her voice, showing up on camera and speaking as who she really is. So I have lots of stories like that. That's one of my favorites, though.
I think that is a fantastic. So I love that story. Simply because your first instinct is, no, my client didn't go viral. She got hacked. I have to make sure it's her.
I know, isn't that terrible? I need to have more faith. Anyway, it's Katie Carr's Photography. So if anybody wants to go and check out the account, at Katie Carr's Photography.
Be definitely in the show notes down below. We're coming to the end, which I hate because I'm having such a great time talking with you, Sally, learning so much and sharing laughs. However, I have your 10-year-old self here. She's a bit of a spitfire. She's really ready to go out and have fun and, use her voice. I would love for you to provide us maybe with some advice, one piece of advice you would love to be able to hand back to your 10-year-old self.
Oh, I would say to her that it's never too late to make a new decision. It's never too late to make a new decision. I think that when I was younger, and even sometimes now, you get yourself into this idea of this is the path, right? I've set the path and I'm going to follow the path. It's absolutely important, I believe, to set goals and to have visions. Yet if we get too hell-bent on one particular path, we're often missing out on other paths that could be even better. So it's never too late to make a new decision. And if you feel in your heart that you want to shift course, I believe you always can.
I love it. It's an amazing piece of advice. I love asking that question to entrepreneurs because I always come up with some just mind-blowing advice. So thank you so much for that, Sally. Oh,
thank you. And, I really, so much that has helped me has been advice from other entrepreneurs. It's such a beautiful community. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure a lot of entrepreneurs had the story of trying to troubleshoot something for ages, Googling this and that, researching, and then they just go somewhere and ask another entrepreneur. And they're like, oh yeah, just use this. You're like, oh, so thanks.
So true.
So it's so great to always ask your community. And I find this globally, entrepreneurs are really always willing to help where they can.
I love it. Sally, I'm going to jump off stage here. I would love for you to let my audience know where they can connect with you, how they can possibly hire you to connect so that they could have a better public speaking event or have a better coach. So the floor is yours.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. Well, my name's Sally Prosser. I'm not an international woman of mystery. You can find me on almost every social platform, on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. I'm at Sally Prosser Voice. I'm also on LinkedIn. I would love to hear a DM from you and join my community of soul speakers. Thank you very much.
Sally, I can't thank you enough for coming on and sharing your voice with my audience and your story. It was a pleasure having you.
My absolute pleasure, Phil. Thank you.
To my audience, make sure you check out the show notes down below to connect with Sally and, come into your own voice and become part of her voice connection. I thank you so much for listening, and always remember to invest in yourself.